Hi friends, welcome to episode 45. It's Saturday, it's about 6:30 in the morning, and it's about 5 degrees out there at the moment. This is probably the last opportunity, as the weather is now closing in, for me to put some paint on the bus. So what I'm planning to do is, fingers and toes crossed, put some green on that bonnet that I was doing last week, and to do the black on the grill areas that go around the radiator, and some of the other bits and pieces inside of the wing. So that's the plan for painting. But there's also got some other bits and pieces to do as well. I think there's tons of stuff to do on this. It's going to take forever, unfortunately. I want to have a look at continuing with fitting the isolator and the boost socket. So I might have a little tinker around with that this weekend. And it may well be a social weekend because I hear a few of my friends are popping up to say hello. So, yeah, let's see how we get on, shall we?
And yes, it did turn out to be a social weekend. Part of the fun of being in a dusty old barn in the cold winter is people popping in to say hello and reminiscing about the things that we've done in the past. So, yeah, this is a bit of a hobby thing, really, to be honest with you. It's not a business, as you probably well know. Huge amount of money spent on this vehicle. The winter is closing in now, and I really do need to get going. I mentioned about painting. There's going to be some more windows to get some more paint on the bus without a shadow of a doubt, but the opportunity to do that is starting to close in now. So, talking of which, let's get started with Saturday. Right, so Saturday morning then, I wanted to get this wing area finished off. Most of the bits, as you know, are off the bus, but this one part here in the corner with the white and green on it, that bit can't be removed from the vehicle. Well, it could be, but I'm not going to bother too much with that. But anyway, I wasn't happy with some of the dents and bangs in the thing, so I decided to fill it. And as you can see in this shot, I am rubbing down the primer filler that I put back over the top of it. The problem is, though, with it being cold and the weather being slightly damp, before you can put any paint on, this has got to be thoroughly dried. And it wasn't thoroughly dried until Saturday afternoon, by which time it was a bit too dark really to put any paint on. But I did manage to do the bonnet. I'll show you that in a minute. But that was about the best I could do on Saturday with the bus itself. You may notice also my notes on the side there. I use the masking paper to indicate the things I need to do. What I tend to do is I get the spray gun out and I start spraying stuff and I think, it's all done now. And then I find, there's the fog light or something like that that's malingering. So yeah, they get missed. So anyway, this is a little reminder to me. I've also got the green there. It says Bonnet. The pipe cover, wing, etc., etc. I mean, the wing's pretty obvious, isn't it? But I do tend to forget things laying around in the shed. A lot of the stuff, once I've painted it, all ends up the back. And then, of course, I forget that it's sitting there. But anyway, hence the reason for that. Right, so let's push on then, shall we? Oh, look, spoiler alert. This is the inside of the bonnet on Sunday morning with a rare bit of sunshine that happened to appear, and I quickly stuck the thing outside because clearly I wouldn't spray this in this weather and then with it wet and tacky stick it outside. It was still a little bit on the soft side, but I thought I'd use this sun as the opportunity to sort of speed up the process of drying. Because it's oil-based paint, it takes an age. The colder it is, the slower it takes to dry, and this is old paint as well, so it really doesn't like to dry quickly. So the purpose of doing this was I really wanted to spray the front of it, as it were, the bit that you see that sits on the other side. The problem is you've got to get this, if you like two colours obviously, you've got to get this side dry before you can then sort of put it on a little stand. Otherwise it ruins that as well. So I really wanted to get that hardened off. So that was my Saturday job, was spraying that and a little bit of the wing, but I wasn't too happy with that, the wing, the latter thing, so I'm not bothered with that. But anyway, there we are. That's the inside of the bonnet, which is starting to look quite tidy. Right, so with the short days, by the time I'd done all of that, it'd gone pitch black outside. And yeah, I decided to pack up and go home. Sunday, though, was going to be far more interesting.
Right, hi friends. It's Sunday morning. He's getting quite nippy now. You do feel it. Anyway, yesterday turned out to be a very social day. I ended up with 6 visitors, almost back to back, funny enough. First was Martin Rickwood, who I haven't seen for ages, so he turned up with his partner. So it was great to see Martin. Then was followed by Roy Gould and his partner Lisa. And we went out and had a sort of fish and chip supper, as it were. And soon after that, Mark Davis arrived with his mother. So yesterday was a really more of a social day, so I didn't get a huge amount done. And because of the fact it was getting a little bit nippy last night, I didn't do as much painting as I wanted. And I had a small catastrophe. I know I said in the intro that I wanted to do the black, the chassis black on various panels. Unfortunately, I haven't got the thinners. The thinners run out, so I couldn't spray them. So I'm going to have to order some more thinners now. But anyway, I can do the green, and I'm probably going to do the silver on this chassis. While Roy was here, we had a chat about the engine on this. And I said, what I want to do is we haven't started it up for probably 25 years now. I wanted to see if the engine was tight or seized. So using a very large spanner, we managed to turn the engine round 360 degrees as a cycle, as it were. So we know the engine is not seized. Now, Roy was trying to push me to put in a set of batteries on it and starting the thing up, but no. Let's do that in January because there's so many other things to do. I really want to get stuff done. So anyway, in the absence of being able to do the black, I'm going to do the silver on this piece of chassis here. So that gets that out the way. The engine, I mean, I know a lot of people like to polish them up and do all bits and pieces, but I don't believe they ever came out of the factory all polished up and looking nice. I tend to think they probably were bare metal. But I'm going to get some heat-resistant black paint, and I'm going to spray it with heat-resistant black paint, as I think realistically that's probably the best nod to how they were when they come out the factory. This is fine. It's quite a clean engine anyway, but I am looking forward to next year when we get a chance to start this up and see if it fills this place up with smoke.
But I think that excitement will hold off for sometime next year. Something else that's got the potential to fill the barn up with smoke, but a little bit more spectacular, is this really dodgy wiring on this RT. So we're going to have a look at that later on. But while we got the opportunity, let's throw some paint on the chassis. Right, hidden under that wing is all of this stuff here. This is the chassis, the road spring, and the front axle. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was, while that wing was off, was to get this sprayed up in silver. And I wasn't planning to do this weekend. It wasn't on my agenda. But I had a little issue with, as you well know, the wing was still damp, and also had an issue with the black paint. I'll come to that later on. So I couldn't do all those, spray all those bits with black paint. But never mind. So I got on with this, the chassis. The front wheel that I'm currently leaning on, I found some more grease on there, so I couldn't do that. But the DA, the orbital sander thing that I'm using, is pretty good at getting all the old scrappy paint off. So it looks really quite tidy now. And I'll show you a picture of what that looks like having finished it. Right, there you go, a bit of a transformation. Wish it was so easy in real life, but it isn't. I've sprayed the spring, and I've sprayed the front bolt, the front axle, but I haven't done the wheel, the brake assemblies, because I found some grease and muck on them. After flooding the barn a couple of weeks back with loads of water, and I really thought I got it all, and it's when you get underneath you think, oh no, there's a load more grease, and it's hardened grease as well. It's almost like steel. But anyway, that's the first coat of paint. It's going to get trashed as I'll be clambering in and out of there over a period of time. So it is only the first coat of paint. But the reason I wanted to do it is just along that line on the axle is the conduit, flexible conduit for the headlights and the fog light. And they need to be fitted at some point. And I remember this idea that I have of making sure that you don't put anything back until everything underneath is painted. Well, that's the reason why I wanted to get this part of the chassis done. So that's the front part of the chassis. It's going to be painted green as well at the front as well. You see that little bit, that dumb iron there, which connects onto the spring. I will do that in NBC green as well. Although I was wondering about leaving it silver, but I don't think so. No, I'll do that all in NBC green, so it look quite tidy. But anyway, that's what it looks like after I've chucked some paint over it.
The eagle-eyed amongst you may have spotted, malingering down the side here, the back of a bonnet plate from an RT. Now, one of the reasons that Roy popped in yesterday was to deliver this to me. This is the bonnet plate off of a red RT, in fact a Saunders-bodied one, RT 4225. I have to look at it myself to remember the number. But anyway, yeah, RT 4225. This one into service in 1950. It was a Saunders-bodied RT. Lasted until about 1970. I'll have to look up the bits and pieces. I did have a quick look last night to see what the history of the vehicle is, and I'll talk you through this when we get round to paint stripping it. Sadly, yeah, it's got to go. It was a go, but I'm going to paint strip the thing, and this is going to be the new one for this RT, because I want to keep the old one that came off of this just for sort of prosperity, really. So yeah, so this one unfortunately gets the chop is the wrong word, isn't it? But yeah, this one gets paint stripped and is going to be prepped up and then sprayed, and then this will go back on the bonnet. So yeah, so this is the replacement, and I'll have a look when we do the paint stripping. I can't actually see any numbers below it because quite often you'd have extra numbers underneath. So when they in the Ordnance sort of overhaul process, this would have gone in as RT 4225 or whatever, and then come out as another RT. So normally these have all got a second, third, or even fourth life. Sometimes, depending on the number of overhauls the bus had. So yeah, this one only looks like it's just got the one number on it. But let's see when we get the paint stripper on it.
Okay, so let's get started with this. And I agree there's going to be people out there that are going to say, hey, come on, that's sacrilege. You shouldn't be doing this with the bonnet plate off of, a venerable vehicle. However, many of these were taken from buses in the 1960s, 1970s. Some at the scrapyards legitimately, and some illegitimately were removed from buses in service. They're actually quite easy because there's only 6 bolts on the back, so you can remove them quite easily if you've got a little spanner. And they made perfect mementos of a class that was disappearing. Now, there's nothing wrong with that if it's in the scrapyard. Perfectly fine, it's fair game. But it was a little bit irritating towards the end because many of these actually just vanished into the ether. But I want to keep RT3461's one intact. It's quite an easy thing to keep. So I asked my good friend Roy Gould if he had any of these, and he said he had. Now, I'll talk a little bit about where it came from in a minute, because it's also got quite an interesting history, as has the vehicle. So let's get down to removing the paint and the transfers from this. Okay, so before we completely erase the last remnant of RT 4225, might be a useful opportunity just to look back on a little bit of the history of this vehicle and its origins. First of all, right, which as soon as I found out about this on the net, I thought, oh, that's interesting, that's fascinating. Most RTs, most bodies of RTs were built by Park Royal and Weyman. Park Royal, based in Park Royal as the name says, and Weyman were in Surrey at Addlestone, and they built the vast majority. But there were 2 other companies that also built bodies for London Transport for fitting onto AEC and Leyland chassis. And those 2 businesses was Craven's, which funny enough were also building trains for London Underground at the time as well as, in this case, Saunders. So Saunders got an initial order of 250 RTs, bodies, to be fitted onto AC and Leyland chassis. However, I think from what I understand, it took quite a while for them to be delivered. London Transport then placed a further order with Saunders for another 250 vehicles. Unfortunately, by the time that that all came through, London Transport decided to cut short that and to only take in 50. And RT 4225 was one of that latter batch of vehicles, that 50 vehicles that came through. Now, As I mentioned earlier on, they were based over in Anglesey, but for some reason, although the RT design had moved on significantly and they were using the three-piece sort of destination display that my one's got, RT3461, they were building them as roofbox RTs. And roofbox RTs, I always think a roofbox RT looks gorgeous. I really do. And the trouble is, though, they look at least another 10 years older. The RT as a design, when it first came out, was actually really futuristic. But sticking a roof box on it, yeah, makes it look quite old. But I think they had an agreement to continue building them in exactly that same way. There were many people, enthusiasts, who say, oh, there's lots of detail differences, and I won't bore you with all of them. But there were a few detail differences between the Saunders. However, let's have a quick look at the history of RT4225. RT4225 was delivered new and entered service at Victoria in 1950, September 1950. It was there for 5 years before moving off to Loughton because they had major plans for Loughton. So London Transport built a massive, beautiful bus garage there. Yeah, the plans to build a sort of an outer London satellite town didn't entirely come to fruition. So anyway, sticking with the suburbs of London, she then moved in 1958 to Potter's Bar, not far from where I run my buses today. Moving in 1962 to Norwood for a stint at Norwood, before being transferred about a year later in 1964 to Leighton. So not far from where it was before, Loughton. And then in 1966 entered its third and final overhaul at Aldenham. On this occasion, she lost her Saunders body and she gained the same body that I have on my RT. So, yeah, a standard Wayman body. And re-entered service at Alperton for a short while. Sadly, in 1970, RT4225 was withdrawn and sold for scrap to Wormwood Diesels, at which point it no longer existed. So the only thing that's existed since then, since 1970, is this. So, yeah, what a shame. But there we are. So that's the end of RT4225. Now, there's an interesting thing about this garage plate. Let me tell you about that now. Right, so let me introduce you to another part of the story of this bonnet plate off an RT. This is Jill Viner. So you may wonder, what on earth has Jill Viner got to do with this bonnet plate? Well, this bonnet plate actually came out of her collection. She was very keen on buses. In fact, Jill Viner was the very first woman to drive a London Transport bus in service with passengers in 1974. She was a groundbreaker for sort of female empowerment in many respects. So she was the very first female bus driver. So Jill got allocated to Norbiton Bus Garage, where she would have driven RTs, not the DM that's shown in this picture, because obviously just a publicity picture. But anyway, yeah, so she would have driven buses exactly like my one, RTs. So what a shame. Unfortunately, she passed away in 1996, and her collection of RT bonnet plates were passed to my friend Roy Gould, and Roy has obviously allowed me to have this one for RT3461. Okay, so after all that work, here is the final finished product. So it's drying in the barn, it's had primer applied to it, and it's now ready to be united with the bonnet from RT3461. Okay, so let's get back to those electrics. Back to the grind, I think. Right, in this, this is just underneath the staircase of the RT. And this is the hatch for the conductor's ticket box or whatever. It's hidden away, quite neatly concealed really, and most people probably don't know they're there. But anyway, just underneath that is this, another access panel for a bit of electrical conduit. Now what I've done is I've removed the cover to the hatch just to get in here, because I've actually got to squeeze myself in and then pull some of those wires through. So just at the top there you can see a bit of conduit that comes in from above, that goes up to the rear blind box. And then just to the left, which is completely covered by that little cover that I've removed, is a conduit that needs to take the saloon lighting round to the little switch panel, which is just underneath the staircase. So yeah, a little sort of dodgy, I won't say dodgy, but a tight area to work in, dirty and grimy. And I've not touched this ever, to be honest with you. The paintwork there is as original. It's the original colour that it was painted in, so that's quite useful actually, because I'll see if I get a match up with what I'm currently putting on. So I'll probably have to roller that, I think, to make that look a bit tidier. But in fairness, no one's ever going to see this. And just, you may notice there's like a piano hinge just by that bit of wire that's hanging loose there. Now what you do is you lift that up and that gives you access to the batteries. Right, so let's move on. Right, an interesting bunch of wires here. These are all original. Some were changed to PVC, as you can see. There's a few there. They got bits of paint on them from where it's been painted in the past. But the 2 or 3 rogue cables that we need to get out, there's that yellow cable which goes upstairs to the saloon lighting. They've got a black cable, which is one of the negatives. There's another black cable, which is the second negative. Now, what is interesting is that from the upper deck, they run 2 negatives down from the upper deck lighting, and they end up here. And then they end up in a similar cable, just one, that runs all the way down to where the light switch box is. So, yeah, that's the point where they sort of join, as it were, and all the other bits of the negatives come up. So all the rear lights, the indicators, everything else goes into that little block that you just see, or similar block to that one you just see above the wires there. For some reason, it was in there. I've taken it out actually because I removed it. But yeah, so the original negative block was there, but for some reason it was 2. And I don't know why there was 2 negative blocks. I imagine that the top one was the original, and the one that I've removed, which is not very well adhered, is probably a replacement for that one. Anyway, there we are. So that's the bunch of wires, and all we've got to do is now we've got to tackle that. Right, as part of tracing those wires around, this is where the upper deck wires end up upstairs. Now, you can just about see there's 4 cables there. 2 pairs go off to the near side lighting, and the other pair goes off to the offside lighting. So, yeah, that gave me an ideal opportunity to get in there, grab those cables, and then replace the cabling that goes downwards. Now, I don't want to replace the cabling that goes to the rest of the light bulbs upstairs. Roy Gould suggests I should. I don't really want to take that ceiling down, to be honest with you, because it's going to be a major job. So I'm going to leave it as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in there, put one of those little Lego-looking blocks in, and basically rewire it. So that's that. So let's have a look at me rewiring this. Meanwhile, while I'm getting on with that, I'll just talk you through this ceiling. I painted this about 30 years ago. And it was really nice. It looked absolutely immaculate. Now, bearing in mind, this bus has been inside the barn now for the best part of 30 odd years. And you can see what happens with the condensation and all the other bits and pieces that go on. You know, the heating up of the barn itself, the cooling down, the freezing. We're pretty much in freezing territory now. So I'm probably going to have to repaint that ceiling again at some point, and I'm also going to have to tidy up all that wreck scene, because you can see, if you look carefully, you see where I got to about the stairs and then stopped with it all. But yeah, those bits are around, but I do need to finish that off at some point. Another little job to do with the RT. Right, let's move on then. Right, firstly, I apologise for the rubbish shaking around of the camera on here. What I'm trying to do here is to get out some of this old cloth covered wire. This is one of the redundant cables, so I'm pulling that out. I've connected up to another redundant cable, the new wires for upstairs. In fact, all 4 of them have been connected to one of these. And then what I'll do is I'll tug it through, and hey presto, new wires are in. So that's one of the old ones pulled out, and now I've got to have a pop at one of these other ones. So I won't bore you with all of that, but I'll show you how we get on in a sec. Right, abracadabra. There we are. We're inside the rear blind box. This is where the back destination glass screen would be. Anyway, so pull out all these old wires, get rid of as many of them as possible, because all they do basically is clog up the conduit. The new PVC wiring is much smaller, but you've got to get out of this old stuff, because what happens is it will just jam in the conduit, and then you'll have your new cables at one end of the conduit and your old cables still stuck steadfastly at the other. So best thing is get rid of all this stuff. Notice how dusty it is in that blind box as well. It's amazing. I did warn you about the dust in that barn, didn't I? Hey ho. Right, so that just leaves me having to clamber into this little restricted space. I apologise for the poor camera work. Bearing in mind there's barely enough space for me in there, as well as the camera. So connected to the end of this cable is the two new positive wires. There they are, for the upper deck ceiling. And then you've got two negative wires, which will appear in a minute. So they're connected up to the old one, and I'm going to remove all that old cloth coloured stuff, and a lot of that that wiring that you see in there is actually old redundant stuff, which also needs to come out. I think what I'll do is I'll have a mass clear up, just go around with the snippers and cut it all out and start again afresh. But I do like to keep at least one wire in the conduit, because I use it as a draw wire, because it can be a bit of a horror story sometimes. Anyway, having got those 4 wires through, so that's my upper deck wiring, all I need to do now is to clamber back into that restricted space and scrape off a lot of the old manky paintwork that was up there. So yeah, that finished me off on Sunday, to be honest with you. Do the dirtiest job at the end of the day and go home covered in muck. The fun of owning an RT, everyone. So look, thank you very much. I think we'll give it a wrap there, because we're almost half an hour now. So we'll give it a wrap at this point. And yeah, thanks very much for viewing. And I look forward to, as usual, as I always say, doing another one of these next week. Thanks very much, everyone, and have a good time.